If you've been grinding in Dune Awakening and something feels off, like your progress just isn't keeping up, there's probably a reason. A lot of players are making the same 5 mistakes right now, and they're massive. Whether it's voting wrong, skipping key unlocks, or outright ignoring easy upgrades, these slip-ups are setting people back hard. I'm breaking each one down so you don't fall into the same trap. So let's start off with the Landsraad, something a lot of players are overlooking or misunderstanding entirely. The Landsraad is Dune Awakening's in-game voting system where guilds earn voting power based on their contribution to rotating house tasks. The more tasks your guild complete, the more influence you gain. Only the top contributing guilds are publicly displayed, Atreides affiliates on the left, Harkonnen affiliates on the right, and even smaller guilds that aren't on the leaderboard still hold voting power. That influence is directly tied to activity and output, not just size. If you take a look at the current state of Landsraad voting, at least on my server, you'll notice a lot of smaller guilds are making a crucial mistake by choosing the armor claim vendor over the far more valuable crafting and repair reduction. Now, to be clear, the armor vendor does actually offer gear, not just schematics, but here's the catch: the gear is wildly impractical for the vast majority of players. First off, the high tier gear available for those vendors is locked behind steep research requirements, so unless your guild has already made significant tech progress, you won't be able to even repair it. On top of that, the materials needed to maintain that gear are incredibly rare. The full cost to outfit a single person is well over 500,000 Solari, and multiply that by your guild size and it becomes immediately obvious why this isn't viable for most groups. And even if you could afford it, you still need access to the right crafting stations to actually make use of the schematics. If you're not set up for that already, you're looking at even more time, Solari, and infrastructure investment. Meanwhile, the second option, which offers a 75% reduction in refining time and repair costs, is a massive economic win across the board. It benefits everyone's, not just the top guilds. And for this next duration of the voting session, most guilds will not be able to actually benefit from it because of these bad voting practices. Now, there is a third option, a 50% increase in XP. That sounds great on paper, but when you weigh it against the cost saving and long-term utility of the second option, is easily the weakest choice by far. That could be 200%, and I still wouldn't recommend it to most players. If you're not thinking about how your vote affects your guild and your economy, you're already behind. Make smarter choices. Don't get baited by the illusion of power when the real value is sustainability. Next, let's move on to trials, something way too many players are skipping or flat out ignoring. You need to understand this clearly. Trials unlock core progression systems, and without them, you're bottlenecking yourself hard. One of the most important rewards from your trials is the static compactor. This tool allows you to gather two of the most vital resources in the entire game: flower sand and spice. Flower sand is necessary for crafting silicon blocks, which are used in nearly every major building project and item fabrication. And spice, it is the backbone of the game's economy and in-game crafting. You're going to need thousands, if not tens of thousands, just to build and maintain some of the more advanced structures. Trials also unlock things like your third skill slot and your death stilts, which generate massive amounts of water. This becomes a serious factor in the endgame, where you can go through literal millions of units of water a day, and you'll fall behind fast if you don't have these unlocked early. So if you're skipping trials or putting them off until later, you are actively stalling your own progress, so don't make those mistakes. Next, let's talk about spice and spice blooms and why you need to be collecting them as early as possible. Spice blooms randomly spawn across the map and recognizable by a huge purple mushroom cloud explosion when they appear. And I notice a lot of players just straight up ignore them and leave them in the sand. And while some of them can be very hard to get to when you don't have your own adopter, if you're ever capable of getting them, you should heavily prioritize collecting them when the opportunity does arise. Now, I bet you're wondering why. Because just like silicon blocks and flower sand, spice is utilized pretty heavily in the in-game crafting, and for reference, one of the best in-game crafting stations will require over 100,000 spice, not including the refining machines to craft. And while not everything is quite that expensive, you will soon see that spice and its respective crafting upgrades, spice melange, is just as core as things like silicon blocks, and if you don't start collecting early, you'll find yourself waiting for spawns, and most importantly, not prepared for whenever the endgame hits, which will require quite a bit of spice. Now let's talk about one of the biggest missed opportunity players are making: rotating through testing station and shipwrecks. There are two types of loot locations you should absolutely be hitting as often as possible: testing station and shipwrecks. These spawn all across the map and both have their own individual cooldowns, but the mistake a lot of players are making is assuming that these aren't worth their time, or even worse, not knowing how they work at all. Let's start with the testing stations. These are PvE focused content hubs that appear across the map, including Haga Basin and throughout the Deep Desert. But here's what a lot of people miss: the A1 through A8 sector in the Deep Desert always contain testing stations that the player cannot be attacked in. These zones are permanently flagged as PvE only, even after the Coriolis storm rolls through. That means you can loot without worry about getting jumped by any other players. And these testing stations, they're repeatable, often full of valuable resources, and the best part is everyone get their own unique loot. That means if someone else hits the same station right before you, your drop is untouched. And in a lot of cases, since this is a high activity zone, a lot of players actually clear these before you even get here, and you have free reign to pick up loot. Now on the other side, we have shipwrecks. These are PvE focused zones, so yes, you can be attacked here, but there's a trade-off. They're significantly faster to run. Shipwrecks are generally smaller, easier to loot, and much more efficient to get in and out of compared to testing stations. However, the loot isn't shared. Once one player grabs it, it's gone for everyone else. The mistake here is simple. Too many players just don't bother running a proper rotation, whether it's in Haga Basin or the Deep Desert. Skipping these stations means you're leaving high value loot, buggy upgrades, gear schematics, and critical materials just sitting there. So start planning your runs, hit both testing stations and shipwrecks, and get in the habit of doing it on cooldown. The earlier you build into this routine, the faster your progressions is going to skyrocket. Finally, when it comes to your buggy upgrades, a lot of players are making a costly mistake by skipping upgrades and sticking with lower tier models. The reality is that the difference in resource yield between Mark IV buggies and Mark V is significant, and is something you need to understand. For example, with a MK4, your mining yield on key resources like jasmium and titanium is noticeably lower. Upgrading to a Mark V buggy doesn't just add a little more armor or storage, it actually boosts the amount of these resources you collect during each mining run. This means you'll gather more materials and less time, which speed up your crafting and building overall. The focused MK5, which is a special upgrade you can get from those testing stations we talked about a moment ago, takes this even further. It offers the highest yield boost, particularly on valuable resources like jasmium, which is essential for a lot of the in-game crafting. Plus, these upgraded buggies have better power and heat management, making them more effective during longer mining and combat sessions. Of course, the focused MK5 will generate more heat, but if you're upgrading your buggy to Mark V, you should be able to sustain the heat as well as getting significantly more items. This is why farming testing stations in the Deep Desert is so important, not only for the general loot, but because that's where you can get these upgraded buggy cutters. Skipping buggy upgrades mean you're missing out on exponentially better resource collection and storage capacity, putting you behind players who have already invested into their buggies. If you want to maximize your efficiency and speed up your progress, upgrading your buggy is not optional, it's essential. And there you have it, guys. That is a handful of tips to help you not make some of the biggest mistakes I see a ton of players making even a week after the launch of Dune Awakening. If you clean up these bad habits, you'll be significantly more efficient and dominating in no time. With that said, guys, huge thank you for checking out the video as well as checking out the channel. If you want to make sure to keep up to date on all things Dune Awakening, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We have quite a few videos coming up that you definitely don't want to miss out on, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. And just like that, guys, I'll see you in the next video very soon.